Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. I think the Super Bowl is going to be interesting for a lot of reasons. San Francisco, as you noted, comes out a favorite. I would bet Kansas City.
I think that line will come storming down, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this institutional coaching.
The Chiefs just won the Super Bowl last season. They won the Super Bowl. They're back in it. How are they not the favorites?
I played them before. Mahomes wasn't making the money. The roster was a little deeper on the defensive side, more experienced. Purdy's a better runner than Garoppolo. I always thought Jimmy threw a great ball between the hash marks. Didn't move much. Purdy gives you a new element. McCaffrey wasn't on that team, so this team has got some elements.
Niners offense is way better now. Their defense is not as good as that team. That defensive line had Buckner. That defensive line was good.
I would take Kansas City in the points, because I've watched San Francisco play crappy football for 3 quarters against the Packers and 2.5 quarters against the Lions. So my takeaway is, I haven't seen Kansas City have a bad quarter. They've had 12 excellent quarters. With San Francisco, they've overcome. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That Green Bay.
Go back to the Baltimore game. They've had some bad games over the past month. It's not even just the playoffs. They've been off.
So, I got to tell you, I find I don't know why I bet against Kansas City. There's just so much institutional intelligence. And it was so clear today early on. I mean, Kelsey had one of his best halves ever. And not even just touchdowns, just making diving catch after diving catch.
It was fantastic.
And there's been this sort of narrative. He's not focused. There's Taylor Swift. And I'm like, well, he's showing off for today because that shit, what I'm watching, maybe he has a ring in his pocket he's delivering tonight, because that was like one of the he was engaged. I thought Travis Kelce really set the tone. And you know what else I liked? In big games, Baltimore didn't give it to Gus Edwards. It's like, what are you doing? They didn't go with their strength. What did Kansas City do? Travis Kelce, Pacheco, Rice, who's become. I love their game plan, which is what's Spag's rep? Pressure. What did they do? Played right into his strengths. Go look at everything Kansas City did today. It was all the best version of what they did. And I think San Francisco's second half, by the way, looked exactly, okay, here, guys, at half. This is who we are. Let's go do what we do. Now, Detroit did the same thing, which is reckless. But Baltimore's the only team this weekend I thought, what was that? I don't get that. So I thought Kansas City and San Francisco, Niners second half, really, that's who they are.
You know, one thing that Andy has changed definitely the last couple of years, and part of his Tyreek's gone, is the knock on him was always pass. He has no problem giving to Isaiah, who against the 49ers, I mean, look at them. They can't stop the run right now. So I would expect for the Super Bowl a lot of Pacheco, because stopping the run is not, and let's face it, their outside passing game with the Kansas City Chiefs is not as good as Detroit's. So the 49ers are going to have to find a way to slow down this game, because that if you're just giving up 5-6 yards of carry, you're just going to be up against the ropes. It's impossible not to be, because it keeps your offense off the field. You know, obviously this guy if it's 3rd and 3, they're talented enough to get those, and they have the greatest quarterback of all time, but you have to stop. You cannot stop the run. Like, they would have lost this game, the version of the way their defense was playing, to the Kansas City Chiefs. And now it's inside fast. Now that benefits the 49ers too. But the other kind of swing is, think about Mahomes these last 2 weeks, just perfect. He's just been A+. Purdy's, been a little bit of a roller coaster. I don't think you can afford roller coaster Purdy throwing a pick 6 or something against Kansas City and being down 10-0 to the level of coaching staff you're going to go to. Now, maybe the Niners can figure out some defensive stuff. But here's one problem, Colin. When you invest a lot into a certain position, like ultimately, like, why are the Chiefs struggling with the wide receivers? Well, they don't have a great player. Like, it's not like they've bought one guy who's not living up. They drafted a guy in the second round, Sky Moore, didn't work out, whatever. Rice is whatever, a 3rd round pick. Like, they'll be fine. They will invest more into that. The 49ers have invested a ton into the defensive line. Right now, Bosa made some plays today, but Chase Young, they traded a 3rd round pick for. He's nowhere. Armstead and Hargrave today were many places to be found. By the second half, at least Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw started making some plays. But when you invest in an area, this was the downfall of the Philadelphia Eagles. When you put all that money into the defensive line, well, if the defensive line doesn't play at like an A- level, and if you put them at like a C plus B minus, you're going to be screwed because you're going to have major liabilities at other spots. This is a business that you build the pie chart over. And the Niners are very dependent on this defensive line. And right now, it is not good. Beside Bosa, none of them are making plays consistent. And they definitely, against the run, they're all getting turned around in these gaping holes. So Andy Reid might have been a passing coach, but I would imagine that you're going to get a big dose of running game come the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feel because I will say this. I think Kansas City has the best quarterback, the best player I've ever seen. So there's my edge. And I think Andy Reid, I think I've told you this before, that if the NFL would have written that CTE check to the Players Union 10 years earlier and the league would have pivoted to offense, Andy'd be the best coach ever. Yeah. Belichick probably wouldn't have 2 or 3 of his Super Bowls, but it was late. So Andy was working against the league. I mean, these defensive coaches reigned supreme for years and decades in this league. Well, I mean, now you watch John Harbaugh's game plan today. You look at McDermott, Mike Tomlin, how these teams struggle on the O-line, run games. Is it a surprise that Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid are in the championship game? Only McVay, to me, maybe Peyton, but that's kind of the highest cut of the cloth in this league offensively, is it not? Is it not? Shanahan's the best scheme guy in the league. Andy's the best play designer and play caller. McVay's the best offensive culture builder. And then I think Peyton and LaFleur deserve a lot of props. Ben Johnson's probably the best young coordinator. Shane Steichen, I think, is getting really close to put into that.
Yeah, he's damn good. I mean,
it's not a surprise. This is the coaching sport. NBA is a players' league. Baseball's a pitcher's sport. Football, quarterback, and a coach's league. We have the 2 best offensive coaches.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think both of them. And this is what my issue we talked about college football during the season with Lincoln Riley and some college coaches is they don't even look to the defensive side of the ball. They don't attack it till it's too late. Is Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan are huge believers. Now, it doesn't always work, but doubling down on defensive lines, getting aggressive players, paying for corners, drafting guys high on defense. Because part of my ability, right, is going to be I can help the guys out on this side. Now, it helps when you hit star players like Kelsey or Tyreek Hill or trade for Christian McCaffrey. But Jawan Jennings, no one heard of the guy 3 years ago, and now he's making big plays every single game, right? That they can create that with no names. And defensively, they've always, allocated a lot of resources over there. And sometimes offensive coaches, are either 2 hands off. I give Sean McVay a lot of credit. Look how the defensive coordinators he's always invested in, how much emphasis they put when they do have draft picks on that side of the ball, right? Because you cannot win in these big spots. Obviously, the Niners were getting shredded, but their defense came through in big spots that are highly paid, right? Obviously, Kansas City has a fantastic defense. The Baltimore was there because they had the number 1 defense. So offense is huge, and the offensive, head coaches are the ultimately like the swing part of it. But you got to emphasize defense as an offensive coach, because you're going to need that side of the ball. And the Chiefs have really benefited from that this year because their offensive personnel is not as great, but they keep getting better, right? And obviously Kyle, since they've been good, they've always had very physical defense. I also think practicing physically is a really, really big thing. And Andy Reid is still known for running the hardest training camp. Kyle Shanahan talked to their players. Monday through Friday is not that fun. It's a very, very intense environment. It's not negative like Belichick, but in terms of football-wise, you better know your shit or people are on you. And practice is not just lollygagging around in sandals. What was the knock on the Eagles this year? It's like, they weren't really practicing. They were an older team. Well, I get it, but if you do not practice in football, you practice 4 or 5 times more than you play every week. So these coaches are addicted to practice. And Andy Reid and Kyle, they like practice as much as they like the games. Their excitement, getting ready, because it's the preparation but it's also setting the team's tone. It's why Harbaugh's such a great coach. His practices are physical. Like, his team doesn't just show up and shove people around. It starts in the offseason, starts in training camp, and then it's through the weeks during the season. It was always something famous Belichick did. When they were always the number 1 or 2 seed and they got the bye week, I heard Julian Edelman was like, we used to scrimmage in full pads. Like, it was to set the tone for physicality. We didn't want to lose that because that is the separating factor offensively and defensively. And when you practice hard everyone gets better. What do you watch when you watch the Chiefs and the Niners? I mean, people are getting hit hard, offensively, defensively, and it starts with the head coach. You can't fake that. Listen, most people in life aren't tough. Like Dan Campbell's a tough guy. Jim Harbaugh's a tough guy. You go, is Kyle a tough guy? Well, the way he views football, philosophically, 100%. Andy Reid's always smiling and hugging people. I promise you. And he loves throwing bombs. Loves toughness in football, and it shows in the biggest moments because that's where he needed to come through.